Few shows have woven themselves into the fabric of our collective memory, quite like Little House on the Prairie. For nearly a decade, the Ingalls family was a fixture in our homes, their trials and triumphs resonating with audiences of all ages. But the series' conclusion wasn't the heartwarming farewell many expected. Instead, it was a shocking act of destruction, leaving viewers stunned and prompting a burning question: why? Decades later, we're pulling back the curtain on the infamous scene that brought Little House to its explosive end, exploring the behind-the-scenes battles, creative clashes, and the real reason Walnut Grove met its fiery demise. Buckle up, because this is a story you won't soon forget. Before we get to the dynamite, it's crucial to understand why Little House on the Prairie became such a phenomenon. Debuting in 1974, the series was based on Laura Ingalls Wilder's cherished books, chronicling her childhood in the late 19th century. But under the guidance of Michael Landon, the show transcended simple family drama. Landon wasn't just the star, portraying the iconic Charles Ingalls. He was also a writer, director, and producer, wielding immense creative control. Unlike other family-friendly shows of the era, Little House wasn't afraid to delve into darkness. The show unflinchingly depicted the harsh realities of pioneer life, death, illness, prejudice, and addiction. Episodes often ended with bittersweet resolutions, setting it apart from the saccharine dramas of the time. Viewers connected with the show's honesty, tuning in not just for heartwarming moments, but also for its raw portrayal of life's challenges. By the early 1980s, however, ratings began to decline. Audience tastes were evolving and new shows were vying for attention. NBC made the decision to end the series, but granted Landon the opportunity to craft a proper farewell. And what he delivered was nothing short of explosive. The TV movie, Little House: The Last Farewell, aired in 1984, offering viewers a final glimpse of Walnut Grove. But instead of a sentimental send-off, audiences watched in disbelief as the town was razed to the ground with dynamite. In the story, a ruthless land baron claims ownership of Walnut Grove, attempting to evict its residents. Rather than surrender their homes, the townspeople make a collective decision. If they can't have Walnut Grove, no one will. In a series of devastating scenes, families set explosive charges, demolishing the very buildings that had been the backdrop for a decade of television history. The schoolhouse, the mercantile, the beloved homes, all reduced to rubble before our eyes. It was unprecedented. This wasn't just a fictional town. It was the physical set where actors, crew, and fans had poured years of investment. Adding to the shock was the fact that the destruction wasn't a visual effect. Landon had ordered the set to be destroyed with real dynamite. While the choice was undeniably bold, it wasn't without reason. Landon had grown increasingly frustrated with NBC and was determined to end Little House on his own terms. He reportedly didn't want to see Walnut Grove reused as a backdrop for another show or left to decay. By destroying the set, Landon ensured that Little House ended with a definitive full stop, both in narrative and in reality. Cast members have since described the experience as akin to attending a funeral. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura Ingalls, called it a long goodbye, devastating yet strangely appropriate. Public reaction was divided. Some appreciated the symbolic farewell, recognizing it as a dramatic conclusion. Others felt it was needlessly destructive, even sacrilegious to obliterate such an iconic setting. For fans expecting a tender, nostalgic ending, the explosions were jarring, leaving a lingering sense of unease. And just like that, the finale became one of the most talked about episodes in TV history. But to truly understand the controversy surrounding the finale, we must address a critical question. Did Landon's shocking decision lead to the show's cancellation? The truth is more nuanced. While the destruction of Walnut Grove is often cited as the reason for the show's demise, Little House on the Prairie wasn't actually cancelled because of it. The series was already ending due to declining ratings. The demolition of Walnut Grove was, in Landon's view, the most impactful way to conclude the story. Over time, the finale has taken on a mythical quality. Fans have recounted the tale of Walnut Grove's destruction as if it were a punishment from the network or a banishment caused by the episode's violence. In reality, The finale was broadcast and re-aired several times, but it didn't achieve the same syndication success as other episodes. Networks often preferred lighter, more family-friendly storylines. The finale's bleakness meant it was rarely shown, contributing to the myth that it had been taken off the air. While the on-screen ending was dramatic, the real drama unfolded behind the scenes. Even Little House on the Prairie, an emblem of frontier charm and family values, had its share of quirky mishaps. There were timeline errors, costume snafus, and odd moments that slipped past the editors. In one episode, Laura's pregnancy seemingly lasts an entire year. Nellie Olson's perfect curls were, in fact, wigs secured with painful metal combs. And in a bizarre cameo, Colonel Sanders pitches a fast food deal in Walnut Grove, decades before KFC existed. There were also practical blunders. Characters strolling through a snow-covered Minneapolis without coats, filmed in the Arizona desert. Glimpses of modern-style bras and hairstyles, even the occasional dummy falling from a train during a stunt. But these bloopers, in a strange way, added to the show's charm, reminding us that creating a beloved period drama is a living, breathing endeavor. They offer a glimpse into the delightful surprises hidden in plain sight. However, these light-hearted moments couldn't mask the underlying tensions that threatened to engulf the show. To understand why Little House on the Prairie ended as it did, we must examine the people who shaped the show, both in front of and behind the camera, and the conflicts that simmered beneath its wholesome facade. At the heart of Little House was Michael Landon, more than just Charles Ingalls, the devoted father. He was the creative driving force, writing scripts, directing episodes, and serving as executive producer. He wielded the power to shape Little House into something deeper and darker than expected. But with that power came clashes, with networks, producers, and even his own castmates. One of the earliest feuds was between Landon and Ed Friendly, the show's co-creator. Friendly helped develop the series for television, but was soon pushed aside. Landon's vision differed from Friendly's more traditional approach. Landon wanted to explore serious themes, pushing boundaries. Friendly preferred sticking closer to Wilder's books. The creative differences escalated, and Landon's dominance led to Friendly's departure. But the conflicts didn't end there. Landon's relationship with Karen Grassel, who played Caroline Ingalls, was particularly complex. On-screen, they were the bedrock of the Ingalls family. Off-screen, Grassel felt marginalized and undervalued. She claimed Landon refused to give her fair pay, commensurate with other stars on NBC dramas. She felt disrespected by his behavior, describing him as both charismatic and difficult. She also recalled instances where Landon made crude jokes on set, which she found humiliating. Their relationship was often strained. For a series built on family values and respect, it was a reminder that the reality behind the camera didn't always mirror the stories being told on screen. Still, Landon wasn't universally disliked. Many cast members adored him, crediting him with guiding their careers. Melissa Gilbert often spoke of Landon as a father figure. She was just 10 years old when the series began, and Landon took her under his wing, shielding her in a demanding industry. Melissa described him as both stern and affectionate, a man who set high standards but also provided stability. Yet even Melissa acknowledged Landon's absolute control. He had final say over storylines, tone, and casting decisions. When feuds erupted, his voice was always the loudest. Alison Arngrim recalled how Landon could be blunt and intimidating if he felt actors weren't performing to his standards. While she found that intensity inspiring, it was also exhausting. Another significant clash occurred near the show's end, between Landon and NBC. The network was ready to move on, but Landon believed the series still had potential. Ratings were declining, but he felt new storylines could revitalize the show. NBC disagreed. They believed the series had run its course. They ultimately reached a compromise to end Little House on the Prairie after its 9th season and continue with a short-lived spin-off. These creative tensions with NBC played a role in Landon's decision to destroy the Walnut Grove set. From his perspective, NBC hadn't respected the show's legacy, and he wasn't going to leave behind a set that could be casually repurposed. But while he comes across as a man willing to do anything to protect whatever he cherishes, Landon wasn't exactly the best guy back home. When he began working on Little House, he was a married man. However, his matrimonial vows weren't enough to stop his wandering eyes from landing on the show's makeup artist, Cindy Clerico. Unfortunately, while he was still married to his wife at the time, he began an affair with Cindy. Unsurprisingly, the affair caused a little bit of a stir amongst the cast and crew. Not only was Landon having an affair while he was still married, but he was also 20 years younger than his new lover. As expected, the affair caused a strain in Landon's friendship with his castmates. However, as questionable as the love between the cheating duo was, it appeared to be real. They tied the knot in 1983 and remained married until Landon's passing in 1991. While Landon's relationship with Cindy eventually led to a lasting marriage, it wasn't without fallout. The affair left deep scars, particularly among his closest friends and co-stars, including Melissa Gilbert. Melissa had always viewed Landon as more than just a boss. After her adoptive father passed away, she grew close to the Landon family, especially since she was best friends with Landon's daughter Leslie. To Melissa, he became a genuine father figure, which made his betrayal feel all the more personal. Hurt and disillusioned, Melissa held on to her anger for nearly a decade. For 9 years after Little House ended, she refused to reconcile with him. But time eventually softened the silence. She made a surprise appearance with Landon on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and in private, they finally made peace. Tragically, just a week later, Landon passed away from aggressive pancreatic cancer. Their reconciliation was brief, but at least it allowed them to close the chapter on better terms. But before we criticize Landon, it's important to remember that feuds weren't always hostile. Sometimes they reflected the passion of a cast and crew deeply invested in their work. Little House demanded long hours, emotional performances, and often uncomfortable conditions. Cast members endured sweltering heat, heavy costumes, and challenging outdoor shoots. Frustrations flared, but they also bonded over shared struggles. Melissa Sue Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls, described the experience as both grueling and rewarding, testing its cast, but also providing unforgettable memories. For Melissa Anderson, one such memory is possibly the fact that she and co-star Melissa Gilbert never really got along. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But the BTS reality was very different from the on-screen portrayal. While the duo might have looked like the perfect pair, and possibly even made real-life sisters envious of their relationship, the truth was that both of these young women never actually liked the other. Why? Well, the simple answer is that Melissa Gilbert couldn't bring herself to warm up to her co-star even years later. In her memoir Prairie, she didn't hold back, calling Melissa Anderson cold and stuck up. And Gilbert wasn't alone in that impression. Alison Arngrim, who played Nellie Olson, remembered how early on Gilbert had pulled her aside with a warning. "Whatever you do, you watch out for that Melissa Sue Anderson. She's very dangerous, she's evil, and I hate her." At first, Alison tried to bridge the gap herself, but she quickly found Anderson difficult to reach, describing her demeanor as oddly artificial, like a well-trained beauty pageant contestant, and admitting that after a while simply being nice to her became a sort of Zen exercise in patience. Gilbert, meanwhile, confessed in her memoir that although the two were cast as sisters, there was never a real sisterly bond between them. There was a distance to her, a coldness, Gilbert wrote. She wasn't easy to get along with. Looking back, Gilbert also reflected that Anderson seemed to live entirely within her mother's universe, more controlled and guarded than open and expressive. That same tension between appearance and reality extended beyond the cast's personal dynamics into the show's storytelling itself, because for all its reputation as wholesome family entertainment, Little House on Cheese, the Prairie frequently waded into controversial waters. Beneath the pastoral imagery and heartwarming lessons, the series often stepped directly into sensitive territory, sometimes pushing boundaries in ways that were considered groundbreaking at the time, but which today feel questionable, even unsettling. For a show often remembered as wholesome entertainment, Little House on the Prairie didn't shy away from controversy. From episodes about intimate violence and racism to romantic storylines involving minors, Little House walked a fine line. Looking back, these moments show how much cultural standards have changed. One example is the Sylvia storyline. In this arc, Sylvia, a teenage girl, is targeted by a masked assailant who assaults her, leaving her pregnant. This was almost unthinkable, subject matter for a family drama. The show portrayed Sylvia's trauma with unusual frankness, but it felt out of place for some viewers. Letters poured in, criticizing Landon for exposing children to such dark themes. Another example is the relationship between Laura Ingalls and Almanzo Wilder. Melissa Gilbert was only 15 when she filmed romantic scenes with Dean Butler, who was 23. While producers defended the storyline as historically accurate, the age gap added a layer of discomfort. And in Wisdom of Solomon, the show tackled racism through the story of a young black boy who asked to be adopted by the Ingalls family. While some lauded the show for addressing racial inequality, others criticized it for oversimplifying the issue and framing it through white saviorism. These controversial storylines showcase the complicated legacy of Little House on the Prairie. On one hand, the show was bold in its willingness to push boundaries. On the other hand, the series often stumbled when judged by modern standards. So, how did the public feel about it all? In the beginning, they loved it. Little House on the Prairie was sold as wholesome family television, a safe alternative. The series consistently ranked among the top programs. Critics were more divided. Some praised the show for telling complex stories. Others argued that the show's blend of sentimentality and tragedy tipped into melodrama. As years passed, the conversation shifted. Melissa Gilbert wrote about how the show impacted her childhood, but also forced her into demanding performances. Little House wasn't just a nostalgic relic. It was a crucible of real, often difficult emotions. In recent decades, the show has been re-examined. Scholars and critics point out that the show was, in its own way, ahead of its time. This re-evaluation became pointed when discussions of rebooting the franchise surfaced. Some cast members bristled at the idea of a modernized version. To them, the original series had already broken ground in a quiet but lasting way. Do you feel the same way? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified whenever we upload a new video.